It can be fixed. It is not the end of the world. We are not performing heart surgery. We are building a house. Like we are painting a wall. A wall can be repainted. It is okay. It is just, and Dave always says his quote is, he should make it into a bumper sticker. He says it all the time. It's just sticks and bricks. That's what he says. It's just sticks and bricks.
I'm JJ Heller.
And I'm Dave Heller.
And this is Instrumental.
In every episode, we explore the instrumental moments that made our guest who they are today.
We hope our conversation reminds you that every second matters because none of us knows which moment will be the one that changes everything. Big love happens in the small moments. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
It's JJ.
It's Dave.
And guess what?
Guess what?
Dave's picture is now on the logo.
I am famous.
For our podcast and your name. Your name is also on the cover.
This is now Instrumental with Dave and JJ Heller.
I'm so happy about that.
My name is actually before yours.
I know.
So I'm slightly more podcast famous.
Well, here's the thing, guys. This podcast, like Dave does 98% of the work. Like he finds the guests, he sends them the microphone, he asks most of the questions that you don't hear because he edits most of that out. And then he spends hours and hours and hours editing. And all I have to do is be a part of the actual conversation. So, Dave, your photo and your name need to be on this podcast.
Well, now they are.
Yay! Instrumental with Dave and JJ Heller.
Well, JJ, who do we have on the show today?
We have a lovely woman named Jenny Mars.
And how would listeners know who Jenny Mars is?
So Jenny and her husband Dave have a show on HGTV called Fixer to Fabulous,
which she will talk about.
Yeah.
They also actually run a berry farm out of Bentonville, Arkansas, where they live. And proceeds from that business end up benefiting orphans in Zimbabwe. They're pretty amazing people.
Yes, and they are very, 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 very busy.
JJ, some of your favorite content is the home makeover genre.
Oh, yeah.
You just love design. You love the idea of like before and after.
Oh, 100%.
And I have always wondered, how do they pull this kind of stuff off? Like, what would it be like to be a host on a program like this?
Yeah, and how do you get to be a host? How does that happen?
Well, Jenny will tell us.
She does tell us.
So let's hear her story.
Here we go. Jenny picks up her story in the early years of her marriage to her husband, Dave. As Dave and his business were busy building homes, Jenny was excited to begin building their family. But, as often happens, things didn't quite go according to plan. Here's Jenny.
We got married back in Florida, which is where I'm from, and then came back here. And for about the year before that, we were building our home. Dave had started building a year before, and so we built our first home together. Everything about it at the time, because it was all so new, was just an adventure, and it was fun. And yes, we had jobs and we had responsibilities, but it was just the two of us. And so in 2007, we decided to start trying to have a family. And I think it was the first time that we made a decision of what we wanted to do, and we just assumed we would just do that. Because up until that point, we both, I don't want to say it came easy, but it's like if we put our mind to something, we had control over making that happen. And it was hard. I mean, it's so hard. Anybody who's struggled with infertility, hard isn't really even an appropriate adjective. It's devastating every month, and you feel like you're losing time, and you feel this like desperation almost as the months go by. You know, at first it's okay, no big deal. And then it just becomes like almost a panic and almost an obsession. It was just like a single-mindedness of like, we've got to, how can we do this? Okay, what do we try now? What doctor do we see? What adoption agency do we meet with? I would say about a year and a half into trying everything, doctors couldn't tell us what was wrong. Everything always looked great. They always said, oh yeah, everything looks great. This is it. This is going to work. And it didn't. And nobody could figure out why. I ran a lot. I And when I say a lot, it's a lot for me. It's like 3 miles. It's not like I was running every day.
Frequently.
And that was my time. Let's clarify. I wasn't doing the Ironman. But that was like my time to process. I feel like that was when all of the emotions kind of came to the surface. And we had a little dinner party with some friends. It was like 3 couples. And one of the couples was pregnant and told us that night. And when she told us, I looked around and I'm like, oh, wait. And nobody else kind of appeared as excited. I mean, they were excited, but they weren't shocked or surprised, I guess. And so we realized that they had waited to tell us. They had told everyone else. And it was just this very, it was this very uncomfortable moment of everyone was super hesitant. Everybody was nervous. And I hated that feeling of like our friends having to guard their joy around us. I don't know. It was a really confusing, hard. It was just really hard. That was one of the moments that I was like, oh gosh, yeah, this is not good. That people they don't know how to share it with us. And I don't know what that right answer is because I understand what they were feeling, but it was also really challenging and hard. It was really hard. We had gone down a couple different paths with adoption and the doors just closed. And those were very devastating moments. And so we just felt like, we have no idea what you want for us, Lord. What are we supposed to do? But I was done doing any sort of infertility treatments. We had decided adoption was the path we were going to go on. We had been in the Russia program at the time, and we also were looking at domestic adoptions. But when the Ethiopia program opened, I knew that was where we were supposed to go. So shared that with Dave. He was excited. We decided to start that program and that process. We switched everything. And that afternoon, as we were starting that process of switching, and that's very complicated, obviously, with paperwork and all of that, I got a call from our fertility doctor's office, and they said they wanted me to try a new treatment that I hadn't tried. I mean, out of the blue, because I hadn't been there in about 6 months at this point. And they said, your insurance will cover this at 100%, and we think you'd be a good candidate. And I was completely blindsided because that very morning I had received this pamphlet and we decided our Ethiopia adoption. This is what we're doing. I said, no, I can't do this. No. And so I hung up and I called Dave and I shared it with him. And he was like, Jenny, I think we should just at least meet with them and listen and hear what they have to say. So we went to the meeting, room full of doctors with us, and I just sat at the table and just cried the entire time. And I can't explain why, other than I was like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to be a patient anymore. I don't want any more blood work. I don't want any more tests. I don't want everyone looking at me with eyes of pity instead of feeling like a person and a human. And so we took some time and prayed about it and just finally, I just felt like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give it one last try. We did the procedure and 2 weeks later, I had to go do the blood work. I had to drive to Fayetteville. I was just such a ball of nerves. I couldn't even function. So I went home thinking they would call me any minute. And 5 o'clock rolled around. We still didn't have any answers. And I called again and they said, oh, well, the clinic's closed. You're going to have to wait until tomorrow. And I fell on the ground just bawling. I was like, Dave, I can't do this. I can't wait. I can't. Because she had the results, but she couldn't tell us. They had to have the doctor call and it was the nurse. And she said, the doctor needs to tell you. Dave was like, I just need to know. Can you please tell us, just as like another human to another human, like we need to know, tell us. And she told Dave, and I was standing there watching him and his face didn't turn at all. So I just immediately thought it was negative. And so he got off the phone and he just looked at me and said, we're pregnant. We just screamed and cried and jumped around. And it was one of those moments where, like, I'll never forget that moment the two of us shared and just so overjoyed beyond. And then it was really shortly after that I went in for my first ultrasound. They did a very preliminary one and we saw 2 heartbeats immediately. And at the time, like, we just thought, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And I remember leaving and seeing pregnant girls coming into the office and I thinking, like, I was such a jerk. I was like, well, they only get 1 baby. I'm getting 2. We were so excited and so overjoyed. And the fact that it was twins was just incredible. I've learned, because I've now been pregnant 3 times, that I'm like my best self when I'm pregnant. I know people that hate, don't do well when they're pregnant, but I like had energy. I felt great. It was a wonderful pregnancy all along. I was at 29 weeks and I was at work and I just felt a little weird. So I just called my doctor and I was like, I just feel kind of weird. And so I went in and they immediately hooked me up to the stress test and they said, you're having contractions and they're pretty regular. They ended up moving me upstairs and admitting me. They said, these babies are coming. So Dave came to the hospital. I called him and they actually ended up overdosing me. We found out later. I was in and out of consciousness.
Oh my goodness.
And the NICU wasn't a high enough level to take 29-week babies. So we had to go to Little Rock. So the helicopter got there. And because I wasn't doing well, they never let anyone else fly with the patient. So they told Dave, you've got to drive. You got to drive to Little Rock, which is a 4-hour drive.
Whoa.
And I freaked out. Like everybody was scared at that point, and they let him come on the helicopter with me because I'm also terrified of helicopters.
Oh,
so I was like, I can't go on this helicopter. I can't. Because I was terrified they were going to be born on the helicopter. I do remember coming out of the helicopter and it felt like an episode of like ER or like a movie because the people just swarmed around me and all I could see were the lights, and then Dave couldn't come in with me. And that's when they realized I had an overdose of the drug and that I was having a reaction. I was stabilized and basically we were just working on 30-minute increments. So every 30 minutes that we made it, we were celebrating because any time we kept them in utero was amazing. And long story short, they ended up staying in utero for another month. And so It was like they just could not believe it. So yeah, they were there for another month and then they were born. They were miracles. Like everything about their life and the way they came into this world was a miracle. We ended up staying in the NICU and Dave and I lived at the hospital with them for another month, the longest month ever. I mean, they were healthy, but it was also exhausting because we just could never see the end in sight. Like we would have good days, we would have terrible days. Once we were finally able to go home, that was the best feeling, I think, just feeling this complete gratefulness and like the weight of all of the 2 months in the hospital, finally being home with our babies who are healthy and thriving. It was like an exhale, I liked my job. It was fine. A sales manager basically for a yogurt company, but it wasn't what I really, really felt passionate about or really wanted to be doing. I was the steady paycheck and the insurance, and I had to keep my job because we were completely broke trying to build a business together. The first day I had to go back to work, they were 3 months old and I had to fly to New Hampshire for a sales meeting. And I just didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to leave these babies. This is not, I want to be here. And I also want to be doing something that if I'm going to be leaving them, I want it to be for something that is really fulfilling for me. Dave and I remember coming home from work one day. He was in the garage, which he had a little shop in our garage at the time. And he just looked at me and he said, let's do it. And I was like, what are we doing? And he's like, I think you should just quit your job. I think you just need to be done. We had just started our adoption process again. So we had these huge payments and expenses for our Ethiopia adoption that we had put on pause. The boys were only 18 months old, so they were really little, and it was completely crazy. I quit my job that morning. I was still working. I gave them my 2 weeks notice, and I got an email from a waiting child agency, which I had signed up years before when we had started the adoption process. And so I would get these emails. I've been getting these emails for years. And normally I'd get them, I'd look at them, I'd say a prayer for the kids, and then I would move on. And so I got this email and Sylvie was on there and I sent it to Dave and I called him. He's like, hey, you want to come meet me? And so we went and met for coffee and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you think? And he's like, let's call. Let's find out some more information. So we called the agency and we knew nothing about the Congo at that point. We decided to say yes. And then I had a call with another mom who was in process, called me and said, hey, we're in process. Our daughter's at the same orphanage. And I just want to warn you that it is not a good place at all. Like it's really, really bad. And if I were you, I would not do this. I called Dave and I was like, okay, I think we shouldn't do this. Oh my gosh, I forgot. We had actually got a referral with our Ethiopia program the same week. And so we had to decide, do we accept this referral or do we go down this unknown path with this little girl? So basically we were turning down 2 referrals. It was kind of mind-boggling because we were waiting and then we turned 2 down. And so he said, okay. And I said, but the thing is, I can't call the agency on my own because I can't say no. I can't do this because I feel so drawn to her and I can't turn this down. I just can't do it. And he's like, okay, well, when I get home from work today, I'll come home early and we'll call her together. I'll do all the talking. Because I just said, I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll just start bawling and I can't do it, you know? So anyhow, he was supposed to be home and it was very unusual because this is a big deal. I mean, this was a huge deal. He just wasn't home, waiting. I'm waiting. I'm like, Dave, he finally calls me and I'm like, where are you? You were supposed to come home. We were going to call the agency. Now they're closed. And he's like, Jenny, I'll tell you about it when I get home. He gets home, and this, I'm telling you, has never happened. He had forgotten. So he obviously, you know, he's a builder, and we buy land sometimes or a lot or whatever, and we sell it. He had sold a lot, and he had a closing on that lot, and he'd forgotten about the closing. And he never forgets about a closing because you're getting a paycheck. Like, why'd you forget? He never forgets. So he was actually on his way home to come to me to call the agency. And his business partner called and said, hey, where are you? You're supposed to be at the closing. So instead of coming home, he went to the closing. And at the closing, he received a check. And, you know, as he's telling me the story, he hands me the check. And he's like, just look at the check. To the dollar was the exact amount that we owed for if we accepted Sylvie's referral. And so he just gave it to me. And he's like, so what do you think we're supposed to do? Those moments like that, I was so grateful for to this day that I can tell her that story. Like still, there's so much trauma that we still uncover every day. And we have hard days. And I can still tell her, like, God so clearly told us that we are going to be your parents, that you are meant to be in our family. Like, you know, those kinds of stories and moments help her as well.
You have 1 adopted child and 4 biological children. Is that right?
Yes.
What is your kind of reflection on that season, looking back now?
All of those experiences just changed our perspective on little things like paint colors or tile or how to work with clients even. Like we help families get out of their own head a little bit, I think, because the process of renovating a home or building a home is very stressful. Like there's always that turning point where the stress just sort of like gets to you, you know, and not everybody, but most of the time. And it just sort of helps us to be like, you know what, like it can be fixed. It is not the end of the world. We are not performing heart surgery. We are building a house. Like we are painting a wall. A wall can be repainted. It is okay. It is just, and Dave always says his quote is, he should make it into a bumper sticker. He says it all the time. It's just sticks and bricks. That's what he says. It's just sticks and bricks. Long story short about HGTV, a network executive knew some former clients of ours. And so I received an email from Carrie, who was our network executive. Dave and I were actually going on our anniversary trip. I get this email where we were delayed. So I was sitting on my phone checking emails, and I get this email saying, I'm Carrie from HGTV, yada, yada, yada. And I didn't even mention it to Dave because I was like, this has to be spam. I just deleted it. Well,
what?
I just figured this is not, like, no way. We land in Atlanta on our layover, and I have a text from my friend Monica saying, hey, just want to give you a heads up. I just gave your name along to this HGTV person. So I told Dave, I'm like, hey, this person emailed us. What do I do? And I, recovered the email. He was like, I don't know, just see what they want. We talked to her. We said no. Then we said yes. We did a little Skype video with a production company that she put us in contact with. We said we want to do something different. So we did this whole concept of telling the story of the house, not necessarily about us renovating, but about like the history of a house and all this whole thing. And the network passed on it. So we were like, okay, cool. That was that. In the meanwhile, we had a nonprofit where we were feeding kids in the Congo, and we were developing our berry farm. We had already planted the berries. We ended up getting another call from another production company that fall, and we were like, no, we already were contacted. Sorry, there's must have been some miscommunication or confusion. We already did this, and the network didn't want to pursue it. And they're like, well, actually, the network called us because they wanted us to come up with a concept with you guys. And we're like, well, no, we already tried and we don't really want to do that again. Sorry.
Okay. And just like general understanding for those of us who aren't familiar with the way that like these shows end up being made. My understanding is the network is who puts the show on your TV, but the production company is actually the people who make the show, and they end up kind of pitching it to the network. The production company approaches you and says, like, we're working on a concept. Will you be a part of this potential thing that the network might pick up? Is that the way it works?
Exactly.
Okay.
Our kids were little. I was like, I just don't want to put ourselves out there. Like, I just know how mean people can be. I was like, you're just putting yourself out there just to be opened up to so much criticism. And I just don't want to do that. I have no desire. And so Adam from River Media said, let me just come and buy you guys coffee. And so Dave's like, let's just go hear him out. Let's just have coffee. It's just coffee. I'm like, okay, fine.
Famous last words.
Exactly. So we went and we met Adam, and he actually is from Rogers, which is it's like the next town over. I don't know. He just sort of explained to us kind of their perspective on what the show could be and how he really wanted it to be authentic. We had presented, we had said yes to River, did a concept video. The network said, yes, let's do a pilot. I can't remember the numbers they gave us, but we do this many pilots a year, and 5% of those pilots ever go to series.
So you make a pilot, but the pilot may not ever even hit the airwaves.
They said, we'll film the pilot, it will air, and then based on how the pilot performs, then they'll decide whether or not to pick it up for a series. One house, one pilot, and that's the end of it. And it was interesting because we had obviously never worked under those conditions. Huge project. And it normally would have taken at least 6 months. And we had to do it in 1 month. It was kind of crazy. It was crazy looking back. I'm like, wow, I can't believe we did that. I had no control over my schedule. Like, they need me from 7 to 7. And that was really strange for me. Like, for me, that was really hard because the kids were on summer break, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm missing all of summer. We always do all these fun things. We're not able to do that.
I want to hear what it was like getting used to being in front of the camera. Was that a big adjustment for you, or did it feel really natural?
No, it was an adjustment, absolutely. But eventually, I would say after about a week of being together, we knew our crew, so it wasn't even as much about the camera. I was like, oh, okay, that's Jerome standing there, and there's Bernardi. Like, it's not like there's a camera. It's like, oh, Jerome has a camera, but I don't even pay attention to the camera. It's like, okay, watch out for Jerome. Okay, Jerome needs me to turn here, so that is why it ended up being more comfortable. But it still was weird for a very long time. But now I don't even think about the camera. It's literally just like, okay, Jerome needs me to turn. Like, okay, watch out. There's Jason over there. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the people and we've worked with them for so long that it's become really comfortable.
When the crew leaves, do you think to yourself, nailed it?
No, we had no idea. We were like, how are they going to put all this together? And it didn't air until that fall. I can't remember if it was October. I think it was November. We weren't allowed to talk about it until the network announced it. So it was like this huge thing we did that we couldn't tell anyone about. It was really strange.
What was it like to watch it the first time?
I was like, I didn't want to watch it with anyone, but our friends wanted to have a little party. And so I was just so nervous about it. And we had tacos and watched the show. So yeah, I remember. So it was really funny. Our friends all showed up. There was a few clips that were released like on social media from HGTV saying, oh, we have this show's coming out, watch it. And there were just a few little snippets. And so my friend took screenshots because I make ridiculous faces all the time. So they had screenshotted these pictures of me and Dave, and all of our friends were wearing shirts with some ridiculous face that we were making, like a really terrible screenshot moment. And it was just kind of a fun thing that we did. This is cool, great.
And what did they call the show?
It was called Almost Home at the time. somewhere around Christmas time, our network executive called us and told us, okay, I have news. It's been picked up for season 1. And I remember being very conflicted about that. Like, oh, I should be really excited, but also, oh no, we have to do this again. And I think it was 8 episodes. And so I just was thinking, how in the world can we possibly do this 8 more times? Like, that about killed us, that 1 month. The schedule was like February to July to do 8.
That seems like a lot of work crammed into a very small amount of time.
The plan was 2 homes at a time, and you had about 5 weeks start to finish for each. So we'd start 2, finish 2. And right after we finished those 2, we'd start the next 2. It just sort of kept going and like rolling the next to the next to the next. But we were not far from wrapping our final round. And we got a call from our network exec. And she was like, I have great news. You know, the network executives have all been watching the cuts coming in, and they actually just picked up 2 more episodes. So instead of 8, it's going to be 10. So we were like so close to the finish line. And then they just told us we had to do 2 more. And I started just crying on the phone. I was like, no. I was so sad. I was like, there's no way. I can't do it. So they ended up giving us a month off to just have some downtime. We went on a family vacation. That's when we went to Michigan and just relaxed and just had some downtime. And then after that month, we came back and did the final 2 episodes.
When you wrapped that 10th home, like, do you have some sort of tradition to sort of like commemorate whatever
Yes.
that last shot is?
Our show was still called Almost Home at this time when we were filming. We didn't know yet that the name would change. So we had the Almost Homey Awards that next week. It was based on the Dundee Awards from The Office. And so we all went to our barn at the Berry Farm and we had dinner, and just Dave and I gave everybody an award, like just silly awards, you know, and it was just so much fun. A true celebration for everyone. Like everyone, this is not our show. This is our team show. Like it really was like a celebration. We did it. Oh my gosh. Nobody can believe we did this. I can't believe we did it. And so every year since, we've had the Almost Homies. Even when our name changed, we still have the Almost Homies.
What's an example of one of the Almost Homies? Is there like a standard one that's like very coveted?
No, it's all, Dave is very serious about the Almost Homies. He's already ordered trophies for this year.
What is the trophy?
Well, he has trophies made at the local trophy store. They look kind of like the Emmys, you know? He has the plaques made. Like he has them all made. I don't know what this year's trophy. I don't know. He doesn't even tell me. It's very serious and he takes it very seriously and he's in charge. Last year was like an Emmy, a person holding a ball or whatever. And he also comes up with the theme. So last year was shabby chic because he makes fun of the term shabby chic. So that's how we have to dress. The first year, I think it was farm because we're at the Berry Farm. So you have to just interpret that as you will. But the awards are just all year as things happen. He has a note on his phone. And so whenever something happens, like we come up with an award for that person, like one of the awards we have for this year, like, and it'll happen. Like, I'm like, Dave, we should write that down. Our PA actually got a promotion this year.
Production assistant?
Yeah, she was a production assistant and now she's an associate producer.
Okay.
And so this year we love her, but she's more focused and more like
driven.
She's always stressed.
Yeah.
She's got a lot more on her plate. Her award this year is going to be, you were more fun before your promotion. And then everybody will be like, oh, obviously it's Elena. So yeah, so it's just awards like that, like just funny, kind of like a roast, just fun inside jokes. And it's just fun.
It's the equivalent of all your friends wearing your face, making a funny expression.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. We just make fun of one another, and that's our term of endearment, basically.
So at that rep party, did you all know at the time that you were going to be making a season 2?
No. And actually a week later is when I found out I was pregnant with Luke, which was a total shock.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh. But I also was like, if we have to film again, there's no way. How could I possibly do this pregnant and with a baby? Like, there's no way. The show hadn't aired. We didn't even have an air date. But It ended up not airing because there was a ton of change within the network. Scripps Network, who owned HGTV, was then purchased by Discovery Network. So when that happened, there was all of these changes internally. We actually went through many, many, many name changes during that time. They were saying they wanted our show to be a little more edgy and have more drama and all this stuff. And we were like, no, absolutely not. That's not who we are. And we didn't have an air date. We didn't have an air date all year. I ended up having Luke in June. So I was able to have my whole pregnancy not filming, which was awesome. And really, our show might not have ever aired. Like, we didn't know. Like, we could have done all of that work and it never even hit the air. So it had been exactly a year from when we wrapped the show was when it aired.
Wow.
Looking back, of course, it ended up being really awesome because never before in our lives had we ever had a time where we weren't way too busy with too many things on our plates. So we were actually able to renovate our own house, which we hadn't ever had time to do. We actually moved out of our house for about 6 weeks so we could do everything.
Did you film that?
No, and we told them, like, we told our production company, we're like, we're renovating our house. If you guys want to just come film it just in case. And they were like, well, we don't know if there's going to be another season. Why should we do that?
Yeah.
So no, we didn't. Which actually, I was like, man, what a waste, you know? But then also still looking back, I'm like, actually, it was so nice to just be able to do it on our own timeline, not be rushed, to do what we wanted to do.
What it reminds me of is sort of the pressure at a small level that like people just feel with social media. Where it's like, this moment is happening. I should whip out my phone and and turn it into something shareable rather than just like enjoying the fact that like maybe this moment's for you and not an audience.
Yes, that is exactly how it was.
It's kind of hard to talk about HGTV without talking about Chip and Joanna.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Does any of their story and their success kind of play into the way that you guys are viewing what it is that you're doing?
Yes, definitely. Because from day one, I was like, I don't want people comparing us saying we're trying to be them, you know, because we'd been doing this. It wasn't like we just bought a farm and started building and renovating and like just because we wanted to be like them. And we knew that the comparisons would come. So I will say this is ridiculous. But when I found out I was pregnant with Luke, I'm like, oh my gosh, now people are going to think we're trying to be like them with 5 kids. And, you know, like this is literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And I mean, I love everything they do and I love them, but we weren't trying to be them. And our production company and the network were very cognizant of it. And so when they were going through all these name changes, it was actually really interesting because we were almost home and they were very specific that they didn't want anything with the word fixer in it. And so when they came back, when they finally changed the name for the last time to Fixer to Fabulous, we were all completely shocked because we're like, wait, I thought we didn't want Fixer. And that was a big concern for us. Was like, oh gosh, now people are really going to think that we're just trying to replicate what they've done. And of course, people say that online and all, you know, but for the most part, I feel like we've done a good job of like just showing who we are. And like, it's okay. Like you can both be doing similar work and be different people. And that's okay. Yeah.
Last thing about them, like, have your paths crossed at all?
No. They haven't, actually. We have one of our camera guys was on their show. It was the only connection, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because, like, in Christian music, for instance, it's like everybody's in Nashville, and so you kind of end up running into each other.
You know, yes, exactly.
But, like, Waco isn't exactly around the corner from Arkansas.
It's not. And I mean, we have been kind of on an island here with the network stuff because our show took forever to air, then COVID, and so everybody just has been separate. So, yeah.
There's a difference between before and after being a public person and having a platform. It's like there's a level of influence, there's a level of responsibility that comes with that influence. Do you have any thoughts on what a privilege it is to be able to have this platform?
So we did a little fundraiser for our season finale this past season, and We raised $50,000 just for people buying a little raffle ticket for like $25, I think. And that to me, like our goal was maybe 10,000. And so the fact that we were able to raise money that really, like, I know exactly where it's going. I know exactly what it's doing. And I get pictures and updates on what's happening because of the money that we raised, which was this simplest thing ever, like doing a post and creating a little raffle form. That is just incredible. Like those are real people that are really being helped because of a post that I did on social media. You know, that's why we said yes in the first place. So we get to be a part of it. And that's really cool. All of those little yes moments and yes steps through our adoption journey, through all of our parenting stuff, all of those different things, the berry farm, all of the things we've done in our life. I mean, it literally was like a yes, a yes, a yes. And every step of the way thinking, this is crazy. We don't know what we're doing. This is nuts. I just think that for me, that's the message for my kids that I want them to remember about our family and everything that we've all experienced.
Let's rewind back to 2002 meeting Dave. Can you set up that scene for us?
I had an internship my senior year with a public relations firm, and they offered me a job, and I planned to take that. And so a girl that I went to college with, her name's Shayna Brooks, worked for Rubbermaid. So she had just been hired. I thought that was completely random. Like, what in the world? You're going to go to Walmart stores and stack product? Like, okay, that's weird. I'm going to go have a real job. That doesn't, like, I had no desire to do it. She's like, just come to the interview. I think you'd be really good. I think you'd really like it. So I came, I met the team leader. I interviewed a couple times. I was like, you know what? Actually, this seems like kind of cool. Like, in the offer included a company car. So that at the time was awesome. Like, I don't have to buy a car. Okay, that seems like a really good idea. I should do that. So literally that's why I made the decision to go to Rubbermaid instead of this PR job. I had worked at this PR firm for a year in college and I liked it, okay, but it was in an office. It was kind of stuffy and kind of just every day was kind of the same. It was a desk job. And this job, I'm like, this actually sounds really cool because I can make my own schedule and I can work with, you know, other people that are my age. And it just seemed like a better fit. I had just accepted this new job. This is our first training. It was at the Disney resort. And so we were checking in and Dave just introduced himself. And I actually thought, because he was living in Bentonville, and so I assumed he worked for like corporate. I didn't know he was on my exact same team. I thought he was like more important. Like I thought he was higher up in the company. He always laughs about that. Like he had a suit on. He just seemed like he knew what he was doing. And I was like, oh, look at all these people, you know. But we just got to know each other living long distance, which was really cool. And so we'd have these just like work. It was mostly just work calls at the beginning, for sure. Like we didn't have any real conversations like about anything else. And then they just sort of progressed and he would call and like, hey, I have this. And I think Dave probably initiated a lot of the phone calls even more so because he would probably make up a reason to call. He would say that now. But he would just call me like, you know, my manager's doing this. What do you suggest? And then he would be like, so how's your day? You know, and then we would just end up talking. Please talk to me. I have no friends here. All I do is go into stores all day. And then I go home and eat pizza in my apartment. It was when I actually went and visited him. So he had moved to Chicago and he's like, you've got to come visit. Cause I said how much I love Chicago and I had been there a couple times and it was where my dad was born. And I remember thinking like, this is really weird. Like, why would I go visit it? I don't know. It just felt weird. So I went and visited him in Chicago and I got there and he had his little sign. He was waiting for me at the airport.
What was his sign?
He was just being silly, like picking me up at the airport with a sign.
Like
you
a
know?
chauffeur or something?
Yes. His little poster. So we got in the car and it was very awkward. Like it was just so awkward. There was just, I think both of us didn't really know, like, is this like just, I don't know. It was just really, really, really awkward walking to the car. I'm like, I can't believe I came here. This is going to be really uncomfortable. It was only for like 2 days, I think too. So we were going to lunch and we were meeting his team. And so we got in the car. He started driving away and then he just stopped in the parking lot. And I was like, what is happening? This is so weird. And he was like, I'm sorry, this is just really awkward. I'm like, I know it is awkward. What, you know, and we, again, like had been really good friends. Like, this is so weird, you know? And then he just kissed me in the car. And I'm like, what in the world? was out of the blue. And then, like, literally from that moment, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. That's where I was awkward. Cool. Okay. And, like, then it was just, like, from then on, we just were dating. Like, that was it. We went to lunch, which was kind of weird because we were like, okay, that happened. All right, let's go meet your team. I don't know what is happening. And so then over the course of those couple days, I feel like that's when we really, like, became a couple for sure. Like, we just spent time. We went to the park and like he had a picnic and he had all this stuff planned. Like he knew this was going to be the couple days of me coming to visit. It was either we were going to be together or this was nothing.
This was his make or break moment.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we had said, Dave and I both said, we want to be in the same city. So figure out a place because they have offices everywhere. Like just figure out, we want to be in the same city. His job offer was to move to Philadelphia and mine was to move to Atlanta. And he said, I've actually been thinking a lot about this and I am going to move to Arkansas. And because his dad had moved there and his brother was there and his dad had been a builder in Colorado. And I knew these conversations had been going on. He'd been talking about it a lot and he asked me to come with him. I just was like, sure. Looking back, I can't believe it because I'm not a spontaneous person at all. We were young. I had nothing tying me down. I lived in an apartment with my dog. Anyway, that was like over Christmas break. Him and I drove to Nashville together, packed up my apartment, and then drove straight to Bentonville. And we moved there. We arrived here on January 4th. So it all happened in like a week's time.
Wow.
It was such a fun, like just a really fun time because we were finally in the same city and like we would just meet each other for lunch and like, this is so cool. Look, we're going to meet each other for lunch. This is amazing. So it was all that like exciting new life together. And we ended up getting engaged that spring and we got married the next year and built our first house and all of that. It was just always just really exciting.
When that first house was being built, did you ever think to yourself, I could do this?
Not at all. I didn't think it at all. No. It was just fun. It was just our house. That's all. But I think it was when we started buying older homes downtown and renovating them. And there were several that we renovated and we thought we would move into, but we ended up selling them. And that was when it was just a really fun challenge. Like we were constantly dreaming up the next, like, okay, what are we going to do next? Like nobody was buying in our downtown. So we were, and we were getting these amazing deals, but there were all these homes that needed to be renovated. And so we just sort of started doing that just on the side for fun. Like Dave still was building normally and I was still working, but those we were doing just together just because we loved doing it. Like that was when we would get like passionate about it. We're like, this is so exciting. Like this is so fun. And we were able to like dream up, oh, we should move this wall and we should do this. And that was when I think once we started doing that in those older homes, we realized we can do this together and we love doing it.
All of that experience seems to play into the way that you guys work together and how this show has developed.
Absolutely. The thing that comes to mind is just the demands and the pressures of the show, not even the schedule. It's more of all the people that are depending on us now. Like we have this crew and then we have people back in Knoxville that are editing and we have all of these teams of people that some of them we don't even realize who's all, the people that are doing the graphics for the show, for example, our subcontractors, their fam, like all these people that are depending on us doing our job and doing it well is a lot of pressure. And in those early days, it was just Dave and I, like, we liked a house and we renovated it and it didn't matter because we were just doing it for us. Because we were like, we could just move in here or, okay, somebody wants to buy it, we'll sell it. And so I think that in that framework and in that time period, we were able to learn how to work really well together and have fun. And so I think learning how to do this well in obscurity almost really helped us to be in this position that we're in now.
If Shayna hadn't given you that call, then you would never have gone to Disney.
No.
You wouldn't have met Dave. You wouldn't have the life that you have today. Where do you think you would be if you had just gone and worked at that PR firm?
I don't know. I probably would have just had a nice, safe, comfortable life because I'm not a big risk taker. All the things that we've done that have been very unknown and a little scary, I think Dave and I balance each other out where he's the one like, let's just try it. Let's just try it. What's the worst that could happen? And I'm the one that's thinking, oh no, here's all the things that could go wrong. Here's all the reasons we shouldn't try it. We both help to make the other one braver, living on a farm, having all of the things, everything about our life I would have never in a million years imagined I would be doing. And like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine missing out on any of this. I love this life so much. I love where we live. I love having animals. I love having a house full of kids, and it's loud and messy and chaotic, but it's so full and good. And I would have missed a lot of this had I just stuck to my plan, how I thought it should work, and not let God say, no, that's not at all how it should work. Here's a better one.
So, JJ, how do you get on an HGTV show? Step 1, go to that conference where you end up meeting your future husband, who ends up saying yes to things that you're not really most likely going to do on your own. Then watch things unfold slowly over the course of several years until an opportunity comes where you end up getting the chance to be on TV. And then
Are you guys writing this down right now?
just make notes.
But actually, listening to Jenny tell her story is such a good reminder to me that there are so many times in life where things are not happening the way that we would choose. And somehow God is able to open doors that we would have never walked through on our own.
All of that just simply comes from being obedient and doing the next right thing.
Yeah, and being faithful in the small things.
Having a berry farm, for instance.
That's a small thing.
Well, it starts with one little berry. The berries are small.
One little seed. It's very deep, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to find out more about Jenny, visit jennymars.com.
And make sure to catch an episode of her wonderful show, Fixer to Fabulous, on Tuesdays at 9/8 Central on HGTV. This episode of Instrumental was produced by me, JJ Heller.
And me, Dave Heller.
Our theme music is my song, Big Love, Small Moments.
That I helped write. You can always listen to JJ's songs by telling your smart speaker to play music by JJ Heller.
We'll be back next week with another episode of Instrumental, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.